What's up, Fantasy Champions? Spotlight Sports Network is excited to tell you about an amazing deal from Thrive Fantasy, your place for daily fantasy sports and esports. Right now, with promo code SS Network, Thrive Fantasy will match up to $50 of your first deposit. So go to thrivefantasy.com and sign up now with promo code SS Network. That's thrivefantasy.com, promo code SS Network.
Well, all right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, and good morning to you all. Happy Saturday, wherever and however you may be watching and listening today. We are live in Las Vegas. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show. You can find me on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and so much more. We are live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitch, and of course, the Twitter Periscope. That is where you can like and follow me on all social media platforms. And also, follow us on Spotify for all of our audio podcasts that we post up. We've definitely got some episodes that we have up currently, and we are still working on getting some more episodes up as of right now. Also, definitely check us out at the spotlightsportsnetwork.com. And by the way, since the deal started yesterday and still going on until the 17th of this month, when you go online to the spotlightsportsnetwork.com, enter, you'll get 15% off on merchandise purchases. That's t-shirts, that's hoodies, that's hats, that's masks. That's everything that you're also looking for all throughout this cold season. So definitely go and shop and rep your favorite shows from your favorite hosts of the network. We really do appreciate it. That is spotlightsportsnetwork.com/merch. So I know there is a lot of stuff I have got to unload here this whole week. Now, I do apologize for those because we did have the show set last weekend. But, of course, due to technical difficulties, was not able to get the show underway. But we are here this morning on a bright, sunny day on a Saturday when we got college games going on. Got a lot of college football. By the way, the Masters going on in Augusta, Georgia. Tiger Woods looking to defend his title from last year. There's a lot in store this weekend. There's a lot in store this whole week, and I cannot wait for it to start up. So let me just start with this, because I wanted to talk about this last weekend and so on. And, of course, during the NFL trade deadline, there was not much moves that happened. It seemed pretty quiet. There was only maybe small, minimal amount of moves that were happening here and there, but after a while, there was nothing else that really kind of went along in the league. And so then, of course, I think the issue of that is why we didn't get any trades is because look at all the contract extensions all around in the league. Kind of hard at this point that knowing that we're going through a pandemic and the expenses of these contracts, some of these teams could either try to take it on and knowing that they're giving up more than taking that on and knowing that they got a salary cap, They got a salary cap that they have to hit by next year. So that was what was one of the biggest difficulties in the NFL trade deadline, why there wasn't so many moves that happened. And you kind of get an idea. We may actually be going into an interesting free agency by next year. But the one game that last weekend, which was up on Thursday night, Packers and 49ers, there wasn't anything I learned in that game. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. What's going on, Mal Gooley, our good colleague here at the Spotlight Sports Network? Definitely check him out at the Gooley Zone. Malcolm Bean, also known as Mal Gooley. Definitely subscribe to his channel. He's got you covered on everything wrestling, NXT, AEW, SmackDown, and Raw. He's actually coming up with he's got a polling question of what he should do as far as booking. So definitely check it out, vote on it, comment on it, and let him know Let him know exactly what you think and what he should do on his channel. So definitely check it out. So my thing was, look, you had a banged up San Francisco team. They're banged up left and right. Quarterback is hurt. Run game's hurt. Wide receivers now are hurt. And the defense is banged up. And right now, San Francisco, this is either their season or they're done. Because you've got Seattle, who's competitive. Russell Wilson continues to cook. Then you also have Arizona, who's gotten very competitive, and they've got probably one of the best offenses in the NFC. And then you also have the Rams, which the Rams, they're hanging tight where they're at. So San Francisco now is put in this position to where everybody's hurt. Nobody seems to be healthy. And now they have a decision to make when it comes to the quarterback position, when it comes to Jimmy Garoppolo. And just this past weekend, I mean, Jimmy G didn't even look good. Then he got banged up and he's hurt again. And now you have to rely on either CJ Beathard or Nick Mullins. And so at this point, Kyle Shanahan's got a lot of work to do with this San Francisco team because we know they lost a lot of key pieces. But at this point right now, there have been rumored talks about San Francisco moving on from Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think it's understanding. The fact of the matter is they pay him this much amount of money for 5 years, and he's been nothing but hurt. He's been hurt prior in New England. No matter how many times that, they try to make this system work in New England, but he couldn't stay healthy on the field, which is an unfortunate thing for San Francisco. And there is a lot of young talents. Kendrick Bourne, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman. There is a lot of really good talent with this offense. And the defense, which seems to be ridiculous. Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, and so many others. And that's what I think is kind of come to the conclusion for San Francisco. It either has to be their season or they'll have to wait to next season, but then they have to make a lot of adjustments come to the next season. And that's what's going to be the biggest difference maker. But here's the thing. Green Bay fans, this was not really an impressive win. You know what's funny about this? I had a talk with my pops because he was putting up a bet in the game. He put it about $20 or so. And he ended up going for the Packers, which is right. The point spread was about 49. I told him go the over. The only reason why is because looking at how banged up San Francisco was and Green Bay's offense with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, they were willing to put up 30 plus points. And and San Francisco, even if their quarterback is banged up, they still got guys that are willing to score or that know how to score. They know how to do everything right. So at that point at the final score, it came out to 51. And I told him to go exactly up on the over because at the end of the day, Green Bay fans, I didn't learn anything from that game. I learned nothing from that game. And why should I? Green Bay's offense was walking all over San Francisco. And knowing San Francisco's injury plagued. So there was nothing impressive about that game whatsoever. Didn't even learn anything about it. Nothing. But all I can tell you is that when it comes to Green Bay and you've got competitive defenses, like think about it. You got embarrassed by Tampa Bay and you got embarrassed by another team as well. So at the end of the day, you still have to be willing to be staying strong in your group, to continue to get wins. But remember, there are really good, talented defenses. I guarantee you right now, if you put Green Bay in front of Indianapolis, in front of this defense, Aaron Rodgers is going to get pushed around. Darius Leonard, high motor linebacker, and DeForest Buckner, a really good pass rush. Green Bay is a real good team, but I do not think they are the team that could be the threat in the NFL. That's just my personal opinion. That's why even after that win against San Francisco, I didn't learn anything. I think it was just a Green Bay win. You move on, you go right into next week, and that's it. I don't really have to learn much about Green Bay's offense. I already know what I'm getting out of Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones and so many others. Why should I really have to learn exactly what happened with that? All right, let me shift to this. So you know what's funny is word is finally getting out. The word is finally getting out. And Russell Westbrook wants out of Houston. All of us rant and raved about Russell being loyal, being faithful in Oklahoma City, because Kevin Durant ended up chasing for titles in Golden State, and Serge Ibaka gets traded to Toronto. He definitely powers up this defense, and so much. I already knew this was never going to work from the beginning. This was never going to work in the beginning. And now Houston has basically dug themselves up a hole that now they're trapped. They can't even get out of it. Let me just summarize it for you this way about Russell Westbrook, because there were an awful lot of analysts who had talked about this once this news ended up breaking out, and every single one of them, now we know about Russell Westbrook. And you all have continuously told me, Russ is the man. Russ is awesome. You know, he's athletic. He averages triple doubles. How can you not win a championship that way? Have you seen his style of play? It's mostly iso ball. You know who else that you could compare to for iso ball? Oh yeah, that's his teammate James Harden. And even James Harden has a limitation to his game. Russell Westbrook, I guarantee you, since that group in Oklahoma City, with him, Harden, KD, Serge Ibaka, Kendrick Perkins, they still are a threat of a team. They really are. And Chris Paul, what's interesting about this is he proved his point about Houston and the direction that they're in. He proved his point. And the fact of the matter is, Russell Westbrook, no matter how many times you average triple doubles, it's impressive. I can't lie. It is the most impressive thing. But there are certain limitations to his game, in which is the reason why, and I'm going to say this here on the air, and everybody, and even my colleagues on the network have it on record. Russell Westbrook and James Harden will never win championships. They will never win a championship in their careers respectfully. Because if you think about it, we canned Kevin Durant with his decision to go to Golden State to win a championship. He wanted to get that first taste of a championship win. And he did. My only thought was, what were the chances he might have gone back to Oklahoma City to now prove himself that he can win a championship now that he has that experience? Or maybe he would have gone to Boston, or he could have gone anywhere else. But instead, he chose Brooklyn and chose Kyrie Irving, which I have yet to see exactly how that tandem is going to work. But at the end, since Russell Westbrook's been playing this solo game, he can't even make it in some of the rounds in the playoffs. That just tells you a lot of just the limitations that he has in his game, and where he has to have the ball in his hands. And honestly, what made you think that this thing with him and Harden would work in Houston? And by the way, the people who left Houston, 3 important people. Number 1, Chris Paul. Chris Paul left. And Chris Paul, as a leader, knows how to distribute the ball. He also knows how to open up the court. And he also knows when to take smart shots when needed. He's the type of person that he's all about the team. And he's all about getting everybody opportunities and chances to win a game. Not to mention in the biggest spots. Houston was this close. They were a Chris Paul injury away from beating Golden State, and they actually could have won a championship. Not even going to lie. They could have won a championship. And just because of how dynamic that team was, they had a backboard defender in Clint Capella, who's now the number 2 guy that I'm also going to talk about here. But Chris Paul, but the problem of it is, James Harden, like Westbrook, doesn't really get along with anybody. You may talk and say, hey, we can make this work. We can win championships this way. And then I look and I'm just seeing there's lots of arguments that are happening within the court. And now Chris Paul leaves, goes to Oklahoma City, and turns an Oklahoma City team that is supposed to be in superior rebuild mode, and they made the playoffs. What more do I have to say about that? Chris Paul proved his point. Number 2, Clint Capella. Clint Capella, the second I saw this kid, like what made me like him, there was a defensive play he made on LeBron James. Stopped it. It was a great game between Houston and Cleveland. Stopped LeBron in his tracks. And I thought, who is this kid? This kid's actually going to be a really, really good defender. And he's going to be a really good, important piece when it comes to second chance shots and getting the important rebounds, keeping the ball on your side. And since taking on Westbrook's contract at 5 years, $205 million, they couldn't afford Capella at that point. And so they had to trade him away. And then now Houston came across as one of the shortest teams in the NBA, playing quote-unquote small ball. When was the last time that we ever saw a championship team who won with quote-unquote small ball? Name one. I haven't seen it yet. We cannot compare Isaiah Thomas's Pistons, because here's the thing. Even if they played small ball, they were physical. They got in your face. And they were the team that had capable shooters. That's the difference between them and Houston. Okay, so then that leaves to the third important person with this organization, Daryl Morey. You know, Daryl Morey, it doesn't matter what anybody says. He was not in for this trade. He was not. He was not a fan of it. In fact, he despised it because all of this was actually made by the decision from the front offices, not Daryl Morey. Daryl Morey had to finalize it, but he never liked the idea. Never liked the idea. So then in the end, when Houston made those trades, getting rid of Clint Capella, and then they go into the playoffs with what they've got, they get eliminated by the Lakers, and they can't get further into the finals. They can't. So now Daryl Morey's out, and he's in Philadelphia. And I think good things are going to happen for the Sixers. I really do. Because having someone like Morey in the front offices, now, of course, it'll be interesting to see how Elton Brand really works with it. But I think because of how he shaped Houston, I think we're going to expect really good things for Philadelphia in the near future. But in the end, Houston has dug themselves a huge hole they can't get out of. You're stuck in Westbrook's contract. Now Russ wants out of Houston. Oh, I wonder why. Because at the end, it never worked. It never worked. It never got you the possibilities of winning a championship. You were a Chris Paul injury away from beating Golden State and possibly winning that championship. But then you gave up early on Chris Paul. And then he moves to Oklahoma City and proves to you he's a leader. Versus what James Harden could be. Harden, listen. My knock on Harden is he's not a legitimate leader. But it doesn't mistake the fact that his skill set as a shooter and as a scorer is really good. But the problem of it is this ISO ball, It gets old and tiring after a while. And you can't win games this way. The late Kobe Bryant said it better. You can't win championships like this. The second he tells you, you better believed it. But unfortunately, with where Houston really has put themselves in, they haven't learned that yet. Now Russ wants out, and there's only about so few teams. Now his value's dropped. I can only tell you one team in particular that really can take on Westbrook's contract, and there's a reason why. I think the Charlotte Hornets could take on Russell Westbrook's contract. The only reason that they can is because he has that shoe deal with Jordan. That's the only reason why that they would even dare to take on Westbrook's contract, if that was the case. So, but even so, think about it. Charlotte, they're an organization that just develops players. Okay? And there's one real good player I'd love to interview because he lives up out here in Vegas, PJ Washington Jr. Great kid. He's got a lot of stuff. And this is all a developing organization. With him, Miles Bridges, Terry Rozier, that's it. So that would be now the only organization that you would settle with because they can take on the contract, and then not to mention it's the Jordan shoe deal. That's it. That's what you're left with. So, unfortunately, Houston, you won't be seeing a championship anytime soon. But as far as for Harden and Westbrook, you might as well, open up a seat, grab a chair, sit right next to Charles Barkley and Reggie Miller. That's all I really can say. The only guys that haven't won championships. And not to mention, Allen Iverson was a really good player. But they couldn't win a championship. Didn't have the right group around him. That's what's going to be the unfortunate part for Russell Westbrook and James Harden. That's all I can say from there. Houston's dug themselves a hole. They're trapped. They can't get out of it. Now they have to really seriously start to rebuild soon. Coming up next. So right now there's one team. They got such a dynamic offense, yet they can't close out games. But I think there's an outlook as far as the coaching staff goes, because right now the coaching staff is not superb. But I think there are 3 coaches on my mind that I think would be very much the ideal candidates that can make this work, turn this team around, and I think we might actually see a championship in the near future. I'll explain that team coming up next here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. What's going on, Simulating? What's going on, man? Glad you could tune on in. Be right back. We're going to be taking a quick break. Here's a good word from our good friends at Thrive Fantasy.
What's up, fantasy champions? Spotlight Sports Network is excited to tell you about an amazing deal from Thrive Fantasy, your place for daily fantasy sports and esports. Right now with promo code SS Network, Thrive Fantasy will match up to $50 of your first deposit. So go to thrivefantasy.com and sign up now with promo code SS Network. That's thrivefantasy.com, promo code SS Network.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the Snake Sports Talk Show. Really do appreciate you guys stopping on by. By the way, because I do have it at the bottom of the hour, my infamous NFL Prime predictions for Week 10. And it's going to be fun. I'm actually really, really confident on my Prime predictions this week. I think it's going to be fun. Because I know last week, because I tried to get at least my prime predictions out there, but of course, with technical difficulties, was unable to do it. But this week, I'm very confident on it. But there is going to be a bunch of changes that's going to be made. So it'll be interesting. And like we mentioned about Thrive Fantasy, that if you sign up and go online today and you use promo code SS Network, that's Spotlight Sports Network, when you put in $20 of your first deposit, Thrive Fantasy is going to match it to $50 a play. And that is head-to-head, roto matchups, so much more. And there are a bunch of pool plays that are made every day, and you could win up to $15,000 on pool play. So much fun. Definitely check it out at Thrive Fantasy and use the promo code SS Network. That's thrivefantasy.com/SS Network. So, this NFL season's been a lot of fun. This NFL season has definitely been a lot of fun. Lots and lots of different speculations on certain teams and, of course, with certain players. So I really have liked it. And there have been surprising teams that have caught my eye. But I will tell you this. There is one team in particular right now. It is my favorite team. That's the LA Chargers. They are going through big-time struggles. Not with their players and not with their offense, but the fact of just this coaching staff and how things are shaped up. The team is 2-6. And I'm sure a lot of people, including myself, don't even believe this team should basically be the team that looks like their record right now. Not even close. This is a team I think should be at least 6-2. If not, maybe 7-1, depending on it. But I could tell you, this is a team that has struggled massively with closing games. I mean, they're 3-15. Dating back from last year to this year, where they've lost games with 7 points or less. And they are 0-3 when they lead by 16, 17 points, and they lose it in the late quarter. They're taking on Miami this week. And honestly, I mean, I'm going with Miami in that game. Miami's defense has gotten better, and Brian Flores has shown you he's capable of coaching this team. And by the way, Tua looked really good last week. Tua looked really, really good last week. Definitely looks like the promising quarterback that we all hoped for. So here's the deal. This coaching staff with Anthony Lynn, Shane Steichen, and Gus Bradley. Okay, Anthony Lynn, nice guy, really good coach, but at the same time, just has too much of that conservative role in him. Conserving the offense, conserving the defense. That's what's been hurting them the most. And this is a team that's stacked from top to bottom. You can't tell me you can't win a championship with this team. You got a rookie quarterback who just completely wows us all. By the way, he was a mid-season offensive rookie of the year. Mid-season. That's Justin Herbert. Listen, we've seen videotapes and we've seen a lot of clips of him running in Oregon, but we've never, ever seen the arm strength and the throws that he's made today in the NFL. And I can tell you right now, he is comfortable in the driver's seat as being the rookie of the year for the rest of the year. Listen, I love Joe Burrow. I think he's a really good kid. I think there's a lot of potential into him. And they've got a really, really good offensive core. They've got a really good wide receiving core. Joe Mixon, a real good running back for Cincinnati. But there's still some development to be done. But Joe Burrow does have a real good future. He's got a bright future. And then not to mention Tua. The Miami defense has gotten better. They've gotten stronger. Brian Flores is a really good coach. They've got some good offensive players. Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki, Jordan Howard, and Matt Breida. They've got a lot of really good offense. And Tua, who I was not sure how that game was going to pan out. But I'm liking what I'm seeing out of Tua. But this is where, these rookie quarterbacks, they're making such a huge splash in this NFL. in this NFL season. They really, really are. What's going on, Luke Weiss? I like the kid. I like that kid, Graham Mertz. I think this kid's going to be very, very interesting to watch for the next couple of years. But man, he's got some impressive stuff. He's really got some impressive stuff. Speaking of college, because we've got some really good college games today. But man, I couldn't even wait to talk about the Clemson and Notre Dame game. But finishing up my point, there are 3 coaching possibilities that could happen for the Chargers that can turn their seasons around for the next couple of years, not for this year, because we already know nobody's really moving at this point, especially during a pandemic when we're all just kind of trying to be, safe and aware of ourselves. But I think there are 3 coaches who can fit the bill. Number 1, the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, Eric Bieniemy. He's under Andy Reid's coaching tree. Really good offensive coordinator. You can see it how he really just sets this offense up with Patrick Mahomes, one of the ridiculous quarterbacks in the league, and all of the offensive weapons around him. He set them up to where everybody creates space, they get open, and then not to mention, too, the run games, whether it's the ground and pound or the screen play after the pass, it's very impressive. And Eric Bieniemy's really turned this team into an offensive powerhouse. And under Andy Reid, who was a big-time offensive architect, he got the right builder with Patrick Mahomes. And that's what made this whole thing happen. That's why, when you see Kansas City, they're going to win championships for years. It's an unbelievable offense. And Eric Bieniemy has been getting phone calls left and right. So I do believe he's one coach right there in the tree. Number 2, Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer, we know, has not coached since Ohio State. But if you think about the times he was in Ohio State and the amount of talent that he's gotten coming into the program, they've been very, very impressive with him. And he's the type of guy that loves to build young talent. What's to say he doesn't look at the roster right now and looks at Justin Herbert, looks at Jalen Guyton, looks at a lot of these young kids that's here in this organization, and he doesn't build them to be Pro Bowl, if not championship caliber players? I think it is a possibility. Urban Meyer's a really good coach. We've seen what he can do in Ohio State. And I guarantee you that if they sweeten the deal to bring him over to the Chargers, I think that would be a really, really good I think that would be a very good future for the Chargers organization. And then finally, the one coach you would have never expected. This is where I get really dug deep in this one. So here's the deal. Tom Brady left New England, goes to Tampa, and goes to Tampa for his own reasons. I mean, he's earned that right. He's been in the league for 20 plus years. He's earned that right. He's having fun in South Beach. He's got weapons. He's got a defense. He's got all of this. Now, it is interesting because it is under a different coaching scheme under Bruce Arians, which kind of likes to play it a little bit lax and a little bit, loose. So I do have some concerns about that. But Tom seems to be enjoying it. Tom seems to be really enjoying it. The real question is, because I looked at New England and Monday night's game against the New York Jets, had they not won that game, they would have gotten at least the top 4 quarterbacks in the draft. That would have been either Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, and maybe possibly Sam Ehlinger or even Zach Wilson from BYU. Those could have been possibilities. But since they won, they're now sitting 13th in the draft picks. So at that point, you kind of already know in Bill Belichick's head, they're not going to end up getting a quarterback. They kind of lucked themselves out with getting a quarterback. But it will be interesting how the rest of the season pans out. But my only thing is, if Tom Brady left to Tampa, what is to say Bill Belichick doesn't leave New England? and actually go somewhere where he can just enjoy the rest of his career, and then just kind of finish it up in good terms. Because I'll be honest, the relationship between him and Tom, yeah, the feelings were mutual, but at the same time, Bill wanted to continue to revamp the team, knowing they have to go with a younger quarterback. He's tried this with Jimmy Garoppolo. They traded him. He tried this with Jacoby Brissett. They traded him. So he had nothing to work with but just being old-fashioned and sticking with old-fashioned Tom. That's all it was. And I'm looking at it at this point. New England, they don't have big-name receivers. They don't have big-name receivers. Offensive line is a little bit banged up. Defense is questionable, but it's still good. But at the same time, it just doesn't seem like the organization is going to be going anywhere anytime soon. And that's just truths and realities. That's the one thing we have to grasp. So my only thought was there could be two teams involved, and I ended up hearing about this. Number one would be Jacksonville. And I thought this would be interesting because they do have young talents on the team. It's a rebuilding organization. Now, the question is Bill Belichick sold on it? Because right now, with where Jacksonville sits in the draft polls, they sit close to where they can pick up any one of those big-time quarterbacks, whether it's Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence. Either one of them. And then build this young core team to the best of its extent. Or, this is one of my biggest possibilities that I would have never thought of. What if Bill Belichick went to the Chargers? You've already got a young quarterback in Justin Herbert who wows us all every week. You've already got a really good offensive wide receiving core, running backs, offensive line's getting a little better, and the defense, they may need some help, but there are some guys that are stepping up. And knowing Bill Belichick, he will use Justin Herbert to the best of his abilities. And the other part of this is the Chargers haven't been able to sell tickets. They haven't. They haven't gotten anybody in those stands at all. And listen, I cover the Chargers as on the side with this network. And I could tell you right now, there have been Charger fans left and right who have jumped on the channel, who have repped up, and they were so excited because at least somebody is covering up the games. But think about it. There are Charger fans sometimes left and right. They haven't completely bailed. The only ones that definitely bailed are all that are majority in San Diego. But at the end of the day, you bring Bill Belichick. Here's what's funny. I got pushback from the Tom Brady deal. But that's because we all know during the histories between the Chargers and the Patriots, Tom Brady always had their number. But I never got pushback about Bill Belichick potentially being a coach there. And think about it. Tom's having all the fun in South Beach. Why not Bill? Why not Bill just kick it in San Diego, right there beachside? Have a couple of umbrella drinks, and enjoy potentially the retirement years after you're done coaching. I mean, think about it. Tom got what he wanted. Why not Bill gets what he wants? So I'm just saying, I think that would be a really good potential. And I think, too, if Belichick becomes coach of the Chargers by next year, what is to say he doesn't form this team up to the best of their abilities, not play conservative, and maybe this team actually wins a championship? Because they're a team that's ready to win right now. They have the guys. The only problem is they just don't have the right architect to really build this up. So that's where I have it with Eric Bieniemy in Kansas City, Urban Meyer, and then finally Bill Belichick. Those are the three coaches that I think could very much work with this organization, and I think could very much work with these group of players and really work their abilities. Coming up next, so we got a startup date for the NBA. And I think this is going to be very, very interesting. Now, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. But there is a risk because at some point, and I've been getting all this news, that we may potentially be coming to another phase of a shutdown soon. But we haven't gotten all the news yet. But I want to be able to explain about the NBA season and what this is going to end up bringing forth. That'll be coming up next here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. And we really do appreciate you guys jumping up here on by to the Snake Sports Talk Show. We really do appreciate it. Real quick, that I do want to end up saying about the NBA season. So we do have a startup date. They're shooting for December 22nd of next month. So I just think this is going to be interesting. Now we know that there was, the season was put in a halt for at least a couple of months, and then they had to finish up the postseason, which I thought was really, really good. The NBA playoffs was great. But now we're getting ready for the next NBA season. And now the question is if there is going to be one. Now, they didn't mention December 26th because they wanted to start this thing up before Christmas. Now, the only problems is you may end up getting some players who's going to back out. There may be players who may be getting to back out because they need to rest up, they need to get healthy, and all sorts of things. I think that's going to be interesting to see how the NBA really plays that out. But I'm hoping that, things all go well. But right now, again, we're kind of coming into this phase where we may be heading into another shutdown soon. And I'm not sure exactly how this is going to really pan out. A lot of players are kind of just on that standby phase and trying to figure out exactly what the next plan is going to be. Like what exactly is now going to be the next move from here on out. So that was something I just wanted to kind of lay my thoughts into. So first and foremost, I really do appreciate you guys jumping on by and sharing me, basically just hanging out with me here today. What a beautiful Saturday it is. So now I'm getting into my best for last here in this episode. And of course, it's the annual NFL Prime predictions for Week 10. I did not have it for Week 9 after some technical difficulties, but we are back with it, and I'm very, very confident in all of my picks. So here we go. All right, so the Texans are on the road against the Cleveland Browns, and I'm definitely taking Cleveland at -3. Look, Houston has looked like an absolute dumpster fire. things don't seem to be working well, even though that Deshaun Watson is a really good quarterback, and not to mention you've got a real good left tackle in Laramie Tunsil, but they haven't really built up to their expectations. The other thing of it is Cleveland, we know, has had a little bit of some struggles, but I think they're going to end up bouncing back here at home. The run game seems to still kind of be steady without Nick Chubb at the moment, but Kareem Hunt has definitely stepped up in a big way. And then not to mention, Austin Hooper is going to be coming back. So they're getting their star tight end back. The offense needs to play a little bit better, especially with Baker Mayfield and the amount of throws that he's making. But this is where the confidence really has to build up for the Cleveland Browns, because right now, the window with trying to make the playoffs, it's slowly starting to close each week now at this point. We're already 10 weeks in, and this is where they really have to narrow it down. So I'm taking Cleveland here in this game. My final score prediction, 28-23 at home against Houston. They'll beat the Texans, and hopefully they'll get their offense going. So this is not a usual game that I would pick, but I'm going with the Washington football team at +4.5 against the Lions. The Lions have not been good at home. It's been quite the struggle for them in Detroit. But listen, Washington and Ron Rivera has had moments of adjusting the defense to work to the best of their abilities. And then not to mention, it's been causing struggles for Matthew Stafford, even though he does have a really good wide receiver in Kenny Golladay. But the record for Detroit at home has not been great. And this is where I think Washington, this is their time to shine. And Rivera's going to make the adjustments for the defense to be strong, shut every piece down, and cause problems for Matthew Stafford, and not to mention the pass rush. So I'm going with Washington on a +4.5. That's going to round it up. I'm going to go with the score 28-23. Detroit's going to lose it again at home, but Washington's going to come away with the win on the road. All right, this should absolutely be a no-brainer game again. This is another one of those dud games Green Bay is getting, so I'm going with Green Bay at -13.5. Look, Jacksonville, we already know, is in rebuild mode. That's no question. They're just waiting for the next quarterback to come at the helm and hoping that this young core will develop by next year. But Green Bay, we've already seen their offenses has been really, really good against teams that are kind of sitting at sub 500, if not below. And they've been the type of team. Now, there has not been a whole lot of physicality with Green Bay. The only ones that they got embarrassed by was Tampa Bay and a couple of others. But Green Bay definitely capable of putting those points up at -13.5. I'm going with a 35-20 score in Lambeau. I think the Packers win in a big way, but you already kind of know the storyline for Jacksonville. They're in rebuild mode. So this was a tough game here for the NFC East. And I know the Giants the Giants defense is getting much, much better. I mean, this Giants team is getting better each week. I've been noticing that against Tampa, and I've noticed that against Washington. But this is going to be an interesting game. But I'm not shying away from Philadelphia. I'm taking the -3.5. This is a tough game, really, to predict. Now, Carson Wentz, I know on his side, he's been hit a lot, he's been sacked a lot, and he's been knocked down way too many times. That offensive line has not been giving Carson Wentz a whole lot of help. Now, I know that New York, because of how well that they've been developing, it will be interesting for the rest of the game. But we know in the last meet, Carson Wentz found ways to beat the Giants. Now, I think there may be a chance he may end up doing it again, but it's not going to come as easy as it was the last time. But I'm taking Philadelphia winning this game, -3.5. It's going to be a close game score, but I'm going 24-20. Philadelphia wins on the road in New York. All right, so I'm going with Tampa Bay here in this game because there has been tendencies where teams who get embarrassed on national television, they have a way of rebounding and getting themselves back into the win column again. The Buccaneers got embarrassed against the New Orleans Saints with as terrible as that offense and defense was. But Todd Bowles can coach that defense. That defense really can play to its absolute best and its hardest. And I think Tampa Bay against a Panthers rebuilding team, that they are a good, bad team because of how Matt Rule's really kind of revamped this organization. And then not to mention, you got Teddy Bridgewater as the quarterback. Now they are getting Christian McCaffrey back. Now it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of this game flows, but you better hope that Tampa Bay knows the answer against that run game. I'm going with Tampa Bay to rebound and win here in this game. I'm going with a 27-21 win on the road. They're going to rebound after that embarrassing loss to the Saints, and I think they'll get themselves back in the win column. So, of course, my colleagues are going to be very, very happy with me going with this decision. Yes, I'm finally going with the Raiders here at home against the Denver Broncos. Right now, the Broncos, last week they lost, and I think this week coming into it, look, I have to admit, this Raiders team in the last 2 weeks, if not far beyond, there has been questions in their defense, but however, when Kwiatkowski came back from injury, and a lot of they just started taking off on their defense. The run defense and the pass rush, I thought, was very impressive. Not to mention the secondaries have been playing good with Jonathan Abram. And I do think that's going to be the biggest key for the Raiders. But not to mention, too, the Chargers, when they played Denver, they were able to get their run game late. I think the Raiders are going to pound them with their run game all game long. And it's going to be from both start to finish. And Josh Jacobs going to lead the helm. I will have to say, Devontae Booker has been very impressive as well. So I'm going to expect the Raiders to winning this game up at -4, 28-20 at home in Vegas. I think that's going to be a hell of a game, but I think the Broncos are very much going to struggle with trying to contain their offense left and right, especially with the way Derek Carr has been playing. All right, so I've got Buffalo on the road to Arizona, who seems to be on a hot streak. Now, this is going to be one of the toughest games here because the offense for Arizona has been very, very impressive, but I am taking the Buffalo Bills at +2.5. It is a tough game, not even going to lie, but somewhere there, Buffalo's defense needed to get revamped. I mean, they pushed Russell Wilson around left and right, and that was one big game I never expected to see come out of Buffalo. So they came out pissed off. They came out ready to play, and Josh Allen looked much better last week. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how both the Cardinals and the Bills are going to favor out. But I think the +2.5 works for me. Round it up. I'm going with Buffalo 27-24. It's going to be a fun game. Expect it to be an all-out passing game between the two of them. But I think at the end of the day, Buffalo's going to end up getting the last laugh. 27-24. All right, so this was definitely a tough game for me to evaluate, but you know what? I looked at the ins and outs of this game, and I am going with the LA Rams. The only reason of this is because the Rams, they're fresh off of a bye week. They're ready to go. They had lots of time of preparation against Russell Wilson. And by the way, here's a good stat. Aaron Donald has sacked Russell Wilson more than any other quarterback in the NFC. He's got a really good number against Russell Wilson. And with where Seattle sits on their defense, I know they got Carlos Dunlap and I know that they got Jamal Adams. But here's an interesting stat. Jared Goff is 25-4 when he is sacked one time or none at all. And they don't even have a pass rush. That is one interesting stat to keep in mind. And I think because of how healthy and rested that the Rams are, this is going to be interesting to watch them play all throughout this game. So I am going with the LA Rams. -1.5 is all I need. 28-24 is my final score. And I think the Rams are going to do it well at home in SoFi. But I think Aaron Donald is going to be the reason why that, Russell Wilson's getting a bunch of struggles on the offense. So, of course, you got the Niners and the Saints. I'm definitely going with New Orleans at home at -9.5. I think it's going to be interesting. But listen, I'm not saying that the Saints are very dynamic. They really are not. I've been seeing a bunch of times with their offense and their defense, they've had some interesting play calls, but then not to mention they had tendencies with as far as their penalties, and then not to mention miscues. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a dynamic game, but I do believe that they are going to keep it at the -9.5 on their points. And you're talking about a banged up San Francisco offense and defense that they'll score points, but it won't be to a point where San Francisco could potentially be the game changers in this game. So I'm going with New Orleans. 30-20 is my final score. Saints are going to win this one at home. So this is a tough one because we're waiting to see what the news is on Big Ben today and hoping that Big Ben will be cleared off of the COVID list. But I am going with the Pittsburgh Steelers at -7.5. Listen, I love Joe Burrow. I really, really do. I think he's been very, very impressive. But however, that Steelers defense has been phenomenal. But listen, I know last week against Dallas, there was a bunch of questions and there was a bunch of concerns because we weren't sure if there was some serious holes that was in their game, both offensively and defensively, that could change the pace of play for the Steelers. But however, they still managed to get the win. And for as ugly as of a game that it was, I think Mike Tomlin knows by then they are not going to end up having a game like that again. So I think, to me, the Steelers are going to rebound in a big way, and I think they're going to end up pummeling Cincinnati. It's going to cause Joe Burrow an awful lot of problems. I'm going 33-24. Now remember, Burrow can still put up points, but in the middle of those situations in the game, the defense is going to end up stopping the runs, but I also do believe they're going to end up stopping the passing as well. But that's my prediction, my predicted score from there. All right, so this is a really interesting game, but I am taking the on-the-road Baltimore Ravens to taking out Cam Newton in New England Patriots. Listen, this Baltimore offense and defense still manages to be strong, and you're talking about two guys that are going to utilize both their speeds with Cam and Lamar. But I think Lamar's having a bigger edge here on this one because there are at least a couple guys coming back. But at the same time, Baltimore has stayed strong, even if they lost games against Pittsburgh and Kansas City. They've lost against those two competitive teams. That's it. New England right now, they're good, but they're not great. But this is where that I think Baltimore is going to cause Cam a lot of problems. And I don't think New England is going to be in a position where they're going to march downfield and really put up points. So I'm going with Baltimore on the road at -7, and it's going to be a 28-20 score in Foxborough. I really do like this. All right, so the Chargers and the Dolphins here. I'm taking Miami at -1.5 at home against the Chargers. Listen, this Chargers offense has been really, really good, but it's not been their problem. The problem of it is that conservative head coaching staff that's been really, really bad. And they have shown you multiple times. They're 0-3 when they're leading 16+, and then they cough them all out. They cough up all those points. And by the way, they're facing against a Dolphins defense that every week seems to get better with Brian Flores. And that is one of the toughest things that the Chargers now have to come across. Because even though Justin Herbert is capable of putting up points and the offense can march downfield, but it is that conservative defense that really blows it for the Chargers. And that's where I think late in those games, they're not going to make it easy. And I think Miami's just going to end up pushing them around. But Tua last week had looked very, very impressive. So I am excited for this young quarterback matchup here that we get to see between Tua and Justin Herbert. But I think Miami gets the last laugh with their defense. 28-24 is what I'm going with -1.5. I really do like that potential. But this is my truth and reality here again in this matchup. All right, this is another tough game, but I think this is going to be interesting. But I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings on the road in Chicago, -2.5. Listen, Chicago's offense has looked terrible. I mean, the offense with as far as generating passes, generating yards after catch has not been great. And outside of Allen Robinson, there really hasn't been anybody to step up. Not to mention, you put in Nick Foles, you know what you're going to get out of Nick Foles. Okay? There's no question, okay? There shouldn't even be any more debate of what we think about Nick Foles anymore. Like, I'm tired of hearing it. But the thing of this is Chicago, the weakness is not the defense. The defense can really push offenses around. But when you have an offense that can't really generate so many good passes or generate any points, that's going to be a big-time struggle for Chicago, and how that they're going to end up maintaining themselves in this game at home, especially. And because we have a lot of questions on Kirk Cousins, we don't know exactly what he's going to end up doing week in and week out. So, but I do think that it's not really going to be all about Kirk Cousins all throughout this game. I think it's going to be mostly about Dalvin Cook. And Dalvin Cook has really been cooking against some of these opposing defenses and has really been busting through with the runs. I'm going with Minnesota with that -2.5, 24-20. I think it's close because of just the amount of just blowbacks from both sides. And not to mention, too, Chicago, tough to generate points. But I think it's going to be close like this, 24-20. Vikings win this one. That's what I'm going with. All righty, so there is all of our predictions from there. And then not to mention, definitely check out Thrive Fantasy for all of the latest forecasts on some players. Definitely check it out. There's a lot of really cool pool plays. Here, of course, is the promotion from Thrive's Fantasy when you sign up and you go online today.
What's up, fantasy champions? Spotlight Sports Network is excited to tell you about an amazing deal from Thrive Fantasy, your place for daily fantasy sports and esports. Right now, with promo code SS Network, Thrive Fantasy will match up to $50 of your first deposit. So go to thrivefantasy.com and sign up now with promo code SS Network. That's thrivefantasy.com, promo code SS Network.
Alrighty, folks. Well, that is definitely going to do it for us here on the Spotlight Sports Network, and do it for me here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. We really do appreciate you guys stopping on by. Definitely follow me on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And also follow us on Spotify for all of our audio podcasts. Definitely like, subscribe, and hit the bell button for all the latest notifications on future shows on the Snake Sports Talk Show YouTube channel, and of course the Spotlight Sports Network YouTube channel. And definitely check us out tomorrow morning with our latest NFL predictions for Week 10. I'm definitely going to be up there bright and early in the morning, so definitely check us out here tomorrow. That'll be about 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You don't want to end up missing it. Have a great weekend. Have a great Saturday, and we will see you tomorrow for the prediction show. Take care, you guys.